Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Living podcast. This is Emily Gerde. We have Zoe Who Erickson with us today.
Hi.
And she is a recent graduate from Northwestern Health Sciences University with a master's degree in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. She teaches yoga at Lifetime Fitness in Bloomington, Minnesota. She's completed 500 hours teacher training at the Yoga Center of Minneapolis. Her yoga journey began at age 12, and the process of becoming a yoga teacher started at age 15. Her intention is to change the way people see the world and live their lives through the power of the present moment. Well, welcome again.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. I had the blessing of going to one of Zoe's classes. My mother-in-law brought me to Lifetime as a guest, and I was just so amazed with her. I connected with her right away on Facebook, and I was like, you have to be on my podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
And let's start with your journey to yoga instruction. What sort of inspired you to start on this journey of being an instructor?
From the time I was very, very little, I just had a lot of issues at home with just a stressful situation. I had divorced parents and just a difficult time going back and forth between the two houses and a lot of fighting. And it just caused a lot of anxiety for me. And I actually had really bad stress stomach aches when I was little, probably from the time I was 5 to like 12 years old. And my mom took me to all types of different therapy, like biofeedback and talk therapy and all types of things like that. And nothing really stuck, nothing really worked that well. And my mom was actually practicing yoga at it's this studio called Sai in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
and she recommended that I come just to try a class. And I tried it, and I was like, wow, that made me feel so good. And so I kept coming. And after, I mean, really, it was just a couple weeks of practicing, like my anxiety almost completely diminished. I learned how to, I guess, work with my breath and just control my stomach aches and my other symptoms that came with it. And I guess I didn't really know what I was doing at the time of why it was working, but I just knew that if I brought awareness around the situation and I just focused on my breath instead, at the age of 12 years old, I was able to calm my anxiety and make it stop. And so I practiced at Sai 12, 13, 14, 15. And then my mom recommended that I actually take the teacher training because I loved it so much. And so I did. And so I took the yoga teacher training at the Yoga Center of Minneapolis when I was 15, and I graduated when I was 16. And then I started teaching when I was 17. And the teacher training has, that helped me grow even so much more and learn so much more about yoga and just the power of yoga and the present moment and all of that. So
Oh, that is beautiful. Wow, what a way to just, turn your life around at such a young age.
yeah.
And actually
Yeah.
that's definitely my next question, because I know there are a lot of parents who listen to this podcast, and probably several of them have teenagers or soon to be teenagers. And just to hear your story that you started so young, just sort of
Mhm.
following this path and doing what you love and just being a teacher. I mean, so many,
Mhm.
when I was a teenager, I was like, so I was coaching gymnastics, and when a parent talked to me, I like stuttered. I couldn't even like look them in the
Yeah.
face. So
Yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
get in front of people so young,
Mhm.
where, like, kind of talk about that a little bit, about how you got from that place of doing it to like, oh, you know what, I want to be instructor, and getting past those boundaries of age. And that's just huge. I think people would love to hear that.
Yeah. What's interesting is I actually never really had much anxiety about that really at all. I remember my first time getting up and teaching a class. Actually, my first class I ever taught was at the Lake Harriet Yoga Project at Lake Harriet in Minneapolis. And it was a free class, and and my first class was my mom and one other person, and
Oh.
I was so nervous. I was super nervous, but and it went, it was okay. It was a little rough, but it was my first class, so then I just I kept doing it. I kept teaching classes at the lake, and the second time was a little bit better, and it got a little bit better, and probably like and then there was more and more people that were starting to come to the class throughout the summer, and probably like my fourth or fifth time teaching, there was like 30 people there,
Oh.
and I was like, oh my gosh, I was very overwhelmed, but I just kept doing it, and I just kind of started to get a hang of it. And I think the more that I practiced getting up in front of people and teaching, the better I got. And also, I do have a history of like theater and performing. So I actually went to performing arts schools before that. So I kind of already had I was kind of used to talking in front of people. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. What a great way to use that experience for a
Yeah. Yeah.
career.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, so neat. Okay, so then my next question is for those who either have done yoga or, are getting started with yoga, there are so many different kinds of yoga, and I know there's a lot of varying opinions of like which are the best, and
Yeah.
not that there are any best ones, but as far as your favorites, can you give us a little spiel about kind of what your favorites are and why?
Sure. So like I said, started practicing at Sai Yoga, which was actually a hot yoga studio. I think it was power yoga. And I'd say at this point in my life now, I would not go to another power yoga class, but that's what got me into the more traditional type of yoga. So I don't think that it's a bad thing at all, because I think that it can a lot of times I think people feel that if they go into a class that's kind of physically easy, that they feel that they're wasting their time.
Mm.
And so when you go to a hot class where you're sweating and you feel like you're getting a workout, then they don't feel that they're wasting their time and they feel good. And at least for me, I was like, I exercised as well. And so I was like, I feel good after I exercise and I feel good after yoga, but there's a difference. And I can't quite tell, but there's a difference in the way I feel after just exercise and after intentional movement. And so I think it was after the teacher training that I more started getting into like yin yoga and restorative yoga, more gentle like hatha classes, slow flow classes. And I personally like those better because I feel that it's easier to get present when you're moving really slow and intentionally rather than the faster paced vinyasa. But like I said, and like you said, there's really no good or bad. It's just kind of where you're at in your journey.
I so appreciate you saying that because I do think that just from mainstream perspective, a lot of people kind of do start off with the more athletic yoga. And I know
Mhm.
I've searched on YouTube and just when I want to do something quick at home with my son, and it is always very active and very physical, and
Yep.
a lot of times it'll say weight loss. And so
Yep.
I walked into your class and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like transforming because I know we talked about before the call. There's Ayurveda doshas. So there's three types that we kind of all of have sort of a body type and a way our body kind of functions. And in the Ayurvedic
Mhm.
practice, we all have all three, but we are heavy in one. And so we had talked about how pitta is how we run, and that's very fast and
Yeah.
hot and fiery.
Yes.
And so the yoga that calms us down is really soothing. And then, people who have a little bit more calm and peaceful demeanor, they might want to do a little bit more
Mhm.
of the more active hot yoga to sort of vibe them up. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that makes me think of like I just graduated from school from Chinese medicine, and depending on everybody's constitution, really just what you said, and for even from a Chinese medicine perspective, different types of exercise and different types of yoga are going to be better for different types of people and where they are at in their life. But I will say that I will say for probably most people, it's never a bad idea to slow down and do some yin yoga, some restorative yoga, some more gentle stuff, because I think just in our society it's just very fast paced and stressful. And so it's really important to counter that.
Yes, exactly. And thank you for
Mm-hmm.
stating that, because you're absolutely right, and I am guilty of that. I think it's also awareness, which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, cuz with this more restorative calm
Mm-hmm.
yoga, cuz in a world where fast and more is better, we kind of forget that sometimes less and resting, and you don't have to have an agenda every time you go
Mm-hmm.
to quote unquote exercise. So
Right.
I've noticed a huge shift in my world from going from this exercise yoga to a more breathe heavy,
Yes.
mindful yoga. So I wanted you
Absolutely.
to talk real quick. Your yoga is very unique because you actually have this huge mindful piece. So
Mm-hmm.
let's start with, how did you is that something you did on your own? Were you taught that? Obviously, you've made it your own. And then, why do you feel that's a key piece for yoga?
Okay, so I guess in my teacher training, we talked a whole lot about the theory of yoga, and that was helpful. But honestly, what really actually was kind of the big game changer for me was reading The Power of Now by
Mm,
Eckhart Tolle. And I read that book about 2 years ago, probably now. And I guess that kind of put all the pieces together for me and made me understand why it is so important that we slow down and pay attention to this moment, because this moment, right, is the only one that actually is happening. It's the only one that actually exists. So almost all the time, for most of us, we're living in either the past or the future. Our mind is almost
mm.
constantly in past or the future, and when your mind is in the past or the future, you can never be at peace. There's always some type of underlying anxiety or some depression or whatever it is, the sense of unease. And when you're truly in the present moment, it's the only place that you're really truly at peace.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And if you
Yeah.
haven't read that, it's definitely a must read. Or if you're like me
Yeah.
and you have a toddler, you must listen on an audiobook.
Yes. Right, right, right.
Well, and there's something definitely to say about the mindfulness piece in yoga, because coming from a type A personality, I'm like, feel like I always have to be accomplishing something. And to
Mhm.
do yoga and be mindful, I still feel like I'm accomplishing something, but I'm also
Yeah.
very much in the moment and at peace. So
Yep.
for those type A people who are like, I can't just like lay around and meditate,
R-
well, this is a really good option for you.
Right. Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. And meditation, I think even and I would call myself more type A actually as well. But I still meditate for about 45 minutes to an hour every morning because because it's worth the time. It's like you're investing in a better quality of life for yourself. And when you are living in that vibration of peace and love, you're able to spread it to everybody that you come in contact with. And so you're making such a huge difference with just, taking an hour out of your day to practice presence.
Yes, yes. And I noticed going to your class, I'm kind of a, how do you say it nicely? I'm just very frugal. And
Mhm.
my way of manifesting abundance is just being very on top of my budget and also
Mhm.
meditating. But going to a class was so therapeutic. I think I
Mhm.
was kind of kidding myself thinking that I could just sit home and watch a YouTube and it's the same. But when you're in this beautiful environment with amazing people, you get this
Yeah.
community vibe and you get this kind of supportive feel around you, and you've
Mhm.
got the essential oils going and some
Right.
plants and the lighting, and
Yes.
I think there is something to say. So if you can find a way to sort of tweak that into your budget, I think being able to be somewhere, and even, or you could even just get a group of friends together, right, and just make it very
Mhm.
meaningful and purposeful and
Mhm.
have intent. That's
Yes.
one way to get it in your schedule.
Right, absolutely. And it, like, even though I probably could lead myself through a class, I still go to classes all the time. I try to take at least 2 yoga classes a week because exactly what you were saying before, just the community of it, and just being guided by another teacher that's there and is reading your energy. It's really like energy work being in a yoga class.
Mm-hmm.
If it's, if you're with a really good teacher, it's like energy work, and you're not going to be able to get that through a YouTube video.
Oh, yeah, exactly. With
Yeah.
your 4-year-old jumping on top of you. So
Right. Exactly.
that's just a different kind of energy, which is also good. But
Yes, absolutely.
you touched on it a little bit earlier about your journey towards yoga and now kind of nutrition and Chinese medicine. So,
hmm
do you have any things that you kind of live by that fit into that kind of yoga practice as far as nutrition and general lifestyle that sort of changed your life?
Nutrition, I actually have for a long time, for probably about 5 years. I mentioned before that I was into exercise. I've always been into exercise. I'm still into exercise, but for about 5 years, I struggled with somewhat of an eating disorder, more of just like a compulsive, quote unquote, healthy eating,
Mm-hmm.
where I was just really like obsessive about it. And so, actually, for me personally, I about probably about 2 or 3 years ago had made the shift to be a little bit more lax with my diet.
Mm.
I'm still mindful in what I eat. I eat my fruits and my vegetables, and I eat like generally pretty clean, but yeah, for me personally, I try to be a little bit more relaxed. But I know that is not the case for a lot of people. It's the reverse. So that's kind of what I have to say about diet.
I've actually appreciate you saying that because so many women struggle with this. And,
Yeah.
this whole podcast is about a sustainable lifestyle. And we can't
Mhm.
sustain life if we are so stressed about what we're eating that it
Yep.
actually becomes its own. Your intention was to eat healthy,
Yep.
but you take it to this whole, again, type A level of like,
Right?
and I was there. I was so worried about it. I was a college
Yep.
athlete. I was counting my nutritionist that's hired by the college was telling me to count calories.
Yep.
So she was actually
Mhm.
reinforcing negative behavior. And
Mhm.
I was like, dude, I already eat more healthy than this sheet because I was intuitively knew that for my body, dairy and gluten didn't work at such a young
Yep.
age. And she kept telling me that that's what I needed in my diet. And then she actually told me to like drink an orange juice in the middle of practice.
Mm.
That, of course, when you're in college, it's not orange juice. It's like concentrated, like orange substitute. I don't even know what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Powder.
Uh-huh.
So, you bring up such a really important point, which also reiterates the importance of yoga because you sort
Mhm.
of, you learn to kind of balance with the flow of life and go
Yes.
with the punches and overcome obstacles and just from a more relaxed, peaceful manner. And if we,
Yep.
and I think, I love that you brought it up because I think it's such kind of like the white elephant in the room for all
Mhm.
health professionals and sports. And
Mhm.
because yoga,
Mhm.
yoga kind of dives into like the sports and health. It kind of
Yep.
straddles both worlds. And
Mhm.
I see a lot of yoga instructors on YouTube and things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please eat. So
Mm.
thank you for being real.
Yeah, yeah, and I did all that. I did all the counting calories and counting my macronutrients and all of that, and it like you said, it put so much stress on me, and I think just one day I just kind of realized like that's not helpful, that's not serving me, and I don't I guess I didn't really know what my goal was for that. And so I just let it go, and I'm just like I'm going to eat, you know, whole foods, foods that are clean,
Hmm.
quote unquote clean for the most part, 90% of the time. I'm going to make sure I eat my fruits and vegetables and just good healthy food for the most part, but just not be so neurotic about it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
such a beautiful story. Thank you. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people needed to hear that. It's
Yeah.
definitely not talked about enough.
Yeah. Mhm.
So from this journey of, I mean, you started young, right? You started
Yeah.
like yoga young. So what are some of the mentors or the classes or the things that sort of brought you to the next level of your practice?
I guess who I consider to be my two primary teachers they're both from the Yoga Center of Minneapolis, which actually, unfortunately, unexpectedly closed
Oh,
last week, which was heartbreaking and devastating. But anyway, my two primary teachers are Tolle Sherman is her name, and then Ryan Kelly are my two primary teachers. So my two primary teachers are Tara Cindy Sherman and Ryan Kelly.
So being able to watch them helped you move forward, and obviously you kind of design your own craft as you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yep, and I think all teachers pick up cueing and language and meditations from other teachers because that's how it gets passed down, all meditations and everything. It's yeah, you go to the classes of the teachers that resonate with you, and you learn from, and then you pick the things that resonate, you make it your own, and then you share it, and then hopefully there's some other yoga teacher in the class that picks up what they like, make it their own, and bring it into their class, and it goes from there. So
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, definitely. Just from my experience coaching and teaching, yeah, don't reinvent the wheel, right? Like we're all
yeah.
here to help each other.
Yep, you're exactly. And there's some things that, might like sometimes things will come to me as I'm teaching, like some cueing or something that I say, or maybe I get something from a book or something. But yeah, a lot of it comes from other teachers. Yeah.
Beautiful. And
Yeah.
can you walk us just so people know, like when you say yin yoga, and just so they can kind of get an idea of what that looks like or feels like, so when they kind of come across it, they know. So just walk us through your class from like beginning to end as sort of like the steps and kind of the general flow of what it looks like.
So how I look at yoga, very big and broad. I look at how I teach my beginners in my beginner series. I say that there is yin types of yoga and there's yang types of yoga. So the yin types of yoga are like yin and restorative. Those are the yin categories. And so when I say yin, you can think of the element of water. So it's cool. You don't really heat the body. It's mostly on the floor. It's mostly passive movements, a lot of stillness. Um, and then the yang type, that's kind of generally what we think of. Most people think of when they think of yoga. So it's the vinyasa, it's the ashtanga, it's the more active classes where you're maybe building more heat and doing more active poses.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess when I teach a yin class, as I said, the whole class is slow, and it's not just slow, it's very still. You hold poses for 3 to 5 minutes, and restorative usually 5 to 10 minutes. They're all comfortable, they're all on the floor, and it's gentle. And then my hatha classes and my vinyasa classes, I usually start with, well, pretty much always I start with grounding for depends, maybe 5 to 15 minutes, some type of grounding and centering, and it's just to drop them in and bring them onto their mat and into their bodies and into the moment. And then some gentle warm-ups, and then movement. I sometimes incorporate meditation and pranayama or breath work into the practice. And then there's a cool down, and then shavasana, and then maybe a meditation at the end, or maybe before shavasana. I guess it's very different depending on what I'm doing. I The way that I lead classes, it's a lot of people tell me that they have no idea what they're going to get when they drop into one of my classes, because it can be so vastly different, because I really I really am mindful about what I'm doing for every class. So it depends on the time of day. It depends on
Mm-hmm.
the time of year. It depends on what the requests are in the class, and what people look like. Like if I were to come into a class and everyone was sitting up and active and their eyes were open, versus if I were to come into a class and everyone was lying down in a restorative pose, I would teach the class differently.
Mm.
And there's so many different factors that go into my class, and so it can be so vastly different from class to class.
The way you do it was a breath of fresh air, because it was like taking in what your clients needed. And I so
Mhm.
appreciate, asking I've never been asked before in a yoga class, like, what do you like? What do you need today? And it was
Yeah.
so, I mean, granted, of course we're all shy and we're all like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm sure once people get to know you and have been several times, they're like, oh yeah, my shoulder, man. Like it's
Yep. Yep. And I always love and then that's why I ask. It's important because I mean, I feel almost anybody could go in and just teach just any class, just throw out poses, but every pose has a specific energetic thing that it's doing. And so, it all just depends. I put my sequences together very specifically for the practice of the day.
that obviously comes with your experience because I'm
Mhm.
sure a beginner is going to just kind of have this flow and go with it. And
Right.
that's that's obviously why being in a class is better than on YouTube, because on YouTube you're
Yeah.
just following. It doesn't matter how you're feeling that day or what's sore. And
Yeah. Right.
it really does speak to your experience. And I think for the listeners who are going to be out there looking for a yoga class, you might be interested in asking the owner, what yoga class would be a best fit for me if I'm looking for, something that's active or something that's calm or, individualized, or, so, there's some really great
Mhm.
questions to ask. As
Yep.
far as moving forward on this journey of yours, do you have any big things coming as far as like a yoga retreat, or are there any things coming as far as, like the next step in your Chinese medicine, or what kind of do you
Mhm.
see going from here?
So, it's a very funny timing. So, as I said before, the Yoga Center of Minneapolis recently it closed. I actually went out of town to Chicago for a couple days, and I got the email while I was in Chicago that the Yoga Center was going to be closing, and it was closing immediately. It was closing that day, and so
Oh,
I was like, "Holy cow! When I come back, I don't have a job, so I have no idea." And right now, as I said, I just graduated last December from Chinese medicine school, and so I have two board exams done. I I did not pass my biomedicine board exam twice now, and so I'm going on a third time. This last time I missed it by 1 point.
oh,
Otherwise I would have passed. But it's okay. And so I guess at this point in my life there is a lot of uncertainty. And so I'm just being in that uncertainty right now. So that's my best answer to that question right now is I have no idea.
oh, it's so funny how it all works, right?
Yep,
And these are the times of the most growth, is when we
exactly.
don't know what's coming. So
Yep,
for those
yep.
listeners out there who are feeling the same, I'm actually going through something very similar right now of like,
Mhm.
what's going to happen in the future? And those are the
Yep.
times that, like you said, we just kind of be with it. And
Mhm.
when something inspires you, then you go for it and just try not to force it. But
Yep.
it's this practice of being still and thoughtful and mindful. Like, and
Yep.
for you with yoga, it's like double mindful.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, in those times and for like, type A people, and I may probably most people, but I know if at least for sure for me, I really find comfort in having a plan and knowing exactly what's going to happen next, and being in this space where I don't know is, like you said, it's really helpful in growing spiritually and everything.
Well, what a beautiful time to be on the podcast, because now is
Right.
the fun part. Now where can people find you and help you manifest abundance?
Well, I am at Lifetime right now. I'm still at Lifetime Bloomington South. And like I said, right now I'm checking out different yoga studios in the area and just going to as many classes as I can and trying to find a place that fits. But I really am not quite sure yet.
Well, I will be sure to link that. I think I saw they had like your bio on the Lifetime, so I can link that bio so people can connect with you.
My Facebook page, Yoga with Zoe, I post my schedule on there every week, so when I do find the place that I'm gonna end up, or if anybody has any suggestions, I'm happy to take them and check out classes at different locations. So, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I'll be sure to link your Facebook page as well.
Yes.
Any last words of advice That thing that if you, met somebody new and you wanted them to help change their life, what would it be?
Well, I usually say the three most important things for having a healthy life, in my opinion, is one, meditation or some type of mindfulness activity. And there's so many different ways you can do that. For some people, you can sit down and just meditate. For some people, it might be Tai Chi or Qigong or maybe going to a meditation class, finding something on Google, like, Googling lead me through a meditation or something like that. Any type of mindfulness activity, number one. Number two is nutrition, but whatever that means for you, that's so vastly different for everybody. And number three is some type of physical activity, movement. And the thing about yoga is that it kind of brings those to the mindfulness and the movement together. So I guess that's what I have to say.
Oh, thank you so much for inspiring us.
Yeah.
And we so appreciate your time. And I will make sure all those links are up for everyone to reach you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
As always, we love to hear what you think. Do you practice yoga? Do you have a mindful practice you like to share with us? We really like to know, and we love to share it with our listeners as well. You can reach me, Marianne, at sustainablelivingpodcast@gmail.com. And we are on Facebook a little bit. Right now, social media has gone through so many changes. And I know that a lot of people have left social media altogether. That's another question we would like to ask you. How do you feel about that? Are you still there? And if you are, which platform do you prefer? We really would like to know. As you probably know by now, I'm mostly to be found on steemit.com. That's STEEMIT.com. And you can find me either under my username, Marianne West, or under Sustainable Living without a G, which is also in steemit.com. We do really want to hear, where are you most active? A lot of people have left social media, and we want to stay in touch with you. So on our website, you can sign up to receive emails, which we promise you, we are not going to fill in your inbox too much. On the contrary, you probably don't hear from us very often. I just want to give a big shout out to Emily for stepping up and taking over a lot of the podcasting right now. I'm still in kind of a in-between stage with a lot of different things, and I'm so grateful that she is reaching out to what I think are a lot of really interesting guests, and that she is part of the podcast now. So I hope to hear from you. The email again, sustainablelivingpodcast@gmail.com. Bye for now.